We had massive overprinting of money under QE in 2021. I agree with 2020 because they needed to offset their massive lockdown somehow. And now we've got the opposite. They're destroying money by selling bonds at huge losses and burdening the taxpayer. And surprise, surprise, we've had a technical recession. And again,
remind us of the loss suffered by selling these bonds off, John. What does it amount to?
Well, so far, over about 18-month period since they've been selling them at a loss, the taxpayers have had to pay the Bank of England £50 billion, would you believe? And I seem to be the only MP who thinks this wrong. I don't want my number one spending priority to be paying subsidies to the Bank of England. And if you look at the OBR forecast, they say they're going to be tens of billions more losses to come, and they could lose another 40 billion this year, for example. Well, again, it's not my spending priority that we spend 40 billion on subsidising the bank. So my message to the bank and the government is stop selling the bonds, and that would cut the losses quite a bit. And look at what the European Central Bank is doing. They made the same error with QE and inflation that the Bank of England did. They're not correcting it in the same way. They're not selling any bonds in the market. They let them run off when they mature. The losses are much less and they're spread out over a time period. And they're not paying the commercial banks the full, much higher interest rate now on all their reserves. We never used to either. The Bank of England is. So that's another great big loss for the taxpayer.
But is the Bank of England basically failing the British public then? I mean, because this is kind of a catalogue of errors that you've identified here, being responsible for recent high inflation, selling off bonds costing us billions.
Yes, I think the bank has performed extremely badly over most of my adult lifetime. There have been little periods when it's got it right. We've had a few years when it's worked. But it's been these big lurches in policy. It was QE and now the quantitative tightening policy, which is doing all the damage now. It was an extraordinary policy. It's the kind of thing that Latin American central banks used to do and ended up with inflation, and we never did that. I could live with it in 2020 because of the extreme policy being adopted to close down a great chunk of the economy, but they carried on with it far too long, and now their correction is entirely wrong. No other central bank in the world is both selling huge numbers of bonds at colossal losses and getting it all reimbursed by the taxpayer. This is a gross policy error in the United Kingdom.